My son looked me straight in the eye and said, "You raised us, Dad. That was your job." Those 8 words didn't just hurt, they ended something. For a moment, I couldn't hear the television in the background anymore. I couldn't hear the clock ticking on the kitchen wall that my wife had picked out 26 years earlier. I couldn't even hear my own breathing. All I could hear were those words echoing inside my head. You raised us. That was your job. I looked at my oldest son, Nathan, standing in the same kitchen where I'd packed thousands of school lunches, burned countless Sunday pancakes, and stayed awake through endless nights, helping with homework. The kitchen where both my boys had learned to ride their imaginations before they ever learned to drive a car. He didn't look angry. That was the worst part. He looked convinced. Like he genuinely believed what he was saying. Like love was nothing more than an obligation. Like 40 years of sacrifice deserved nothing more than a shrug. I simply nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't remind him about the overtime shifts. I didn't remind him about the second mortgage. I didn't remind him about the nights his mother and I skipped dinner so our boys wouldn't know money was tight. Instead, I smiled. A small, tired smile. Because there was something Nathan didn't know. Something neither he nor his younger brother Owen knew. 4 months earlier, I had quietly signed the deed to my 43-year-old family home over to someone else. Not to either of my sons. Not to my grandchildren. Not even to a charity. To a woman who had walked into my life as a stranger and somehow became more like family than my own flesh and blood ever managed to be. Nathan kept talking, explaining how stressful work had been, and how I shouldn't take his words personally. Funny how people always ask you not to take something personally after they've stabbed you with it. I just listened. Because I already knew what was coming. Life has a strange sense of timing. Only 3 weeks after that conversation, Nathan lost his executive position. Another month later, I looked out my living room window and saw a moving truck slowly backing into my driveway. His wife climbed out first. The kids came running across my lawn. Nathan stepped out wearing the confident expression of a man arriving to claim what he believed had always been his. He smiled and waved. He had no idea the locks had already been changed. He had no idea the paperwork had already been filed. He had no idea that before sunset, the house he'd expected to inherit would belong to someone standing right beside me. And when he finally learned the truth, well, that's the day my sons finally discovered that inheritance isn't earned through blood. It's earned through presence. But to understand how everything fell apart, you have to understand how everything once fit together. 48 years earlier, my world was simple. It revolved around one woman, Diane. I still remember seeing her for the first time at a neighborhood church picnic. She was laughing so hard at something her younger sister had said that lemonade spilled onto her dress. Most people would have been embarrassed. She laughed even harder. That laugh became the soundtrack of my life. We weren't wealthy, not even close. Our first apartment had windows that rattled every winter, whenever the wind blew hard enough. The water heater worked whenever it felt generous. The couch came from my uncle's basement. The dining table leaned slightly to one side. But every evening, Diane would light a cheap candle she'd bought at a discount store and somehow convince me we lived in the finest home in America. It's not the walls, she'd say. It's the people inside them. Back then, I believed we'd always have enough people inside our walls. Nathan arrived first. I thought I knew what love was until the nurse placed that tiny bundle into my arms. Suddenly, every plan I had became about him. Every paycheck already had a purpose before I even earned it. 3 years later came Owen. Where Nathan had been cautious, Owen was fearless. Nathan asked permission. Owen asked forgiveness. Our house became louder, messier, happier. Diane filled every room with warmth. She remembered birthdays. She baked cakes from scratch. She somehow knew when one of the boys had a nightmare before they even called out. If childhood had a heartbeat, it sounded exactly like our home during those years. Money stayed tight. There were Christmas mornings when Diane and I exchanged nothing but handwritten cards because every dollar had gone toward bicycles or video game consoles or winter coats for growing boys. Neither of us minded. Watching our sons tear open presents was enough. People talk about sacrifice as though it's painful. Sometimes it is. But when you're doing it for people you love, it doesn't feel like giving something away. It feels like investing in tomorrow. I worked construction, long days, longer winters. There were mornings when my hands hurt before I even picked up a hammer. But quitting was never an option. Nathan wanted to attend college, then Owen did too. Neither would start adulthood buried beneath impossible debt if I could help it. So I took weekend jobs, night shifts, holiday work, anything available. Diane returned to part-time nursing even though she was exhausted most days. We stopped taking vacations, stopped replacing old furniture, drove the same aging sedan until mechanics practically knew us by name. One evening I found Diane sitting at the kitchen table staring at a stack of bills. She smiled before I even reached her. I figured it out, she whispered. What? The tuition, I looked down. She'd balanced every number, every expense, every impossible equation. Our retirement savings had shrunk again. She pretended not to notice. They'll have opportunities we never had, she said. That was enough for her. It became enough for me. Years passed the way they always do. Too slowly while you're living them. Too quickly once they're gone. Nathan graduated, then Owen. Both landed impressive careers. People congratulated Diane and me. You must be proud. We were. Unbelievably proud. Our sacrifices had worked, or so we thought, because success has a funny way of changing people, not all at once, little by little. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became holidays. Holidays became excuses, work, travel, deadlines, meetings. The grandchildren always seemed too busy. We understood, or at least we told ourselves we did. Diane defended them constantly. They're building their lives. They're under pressure. They'll come around. She believed that, because mothers never really stop believing. Then came the afternoon everything changed. She'd been tired for weeks. She insisted it was nothing, just stress, just getting older. Then the tests came back, pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctor spoke gently but I barely heard him. The room felt smaller with every word. I reached for Diane's hand. She squeezed mine. She was comforting me. Even then. The months that followed blurred into hospital corridors, medication schedules, sleepless nights, and prayers whispered into empty waiting rooms. Nathan visited twice. Owen managed 3 times. Both always had somewhere else they needed to be. Meetings, flights, deadlines. I never argued. I knew careers mattered. At least I kept telling myself they did. Diane never complained. Not once. Instead, she worried about me. What will you do when I'm gone? I refused to answer, because speaking those words aloud would make them real. One rainy October morning, she slipped away while I held her hand. The room became impossibly quiet. Silence has weight. I'd never known that until then. After the funeral, everyone promised to stay in touch. You know how those promises go. The casserole stopped arriving. The sympathy cards stopped coming. Life moved on. Mine didn't. The house that had once echoed with laughter suddenly magnified every creak in the floorboards. I still set 2 coffee mugs on the counter some mornings before remembering. I still caught myself turning toward the passenger seat whenever I drove. Grief isn't dramatic. It's ordinary. It's reaching for another plate at dinner. It's hearing a song in the grocery store. It's forgetting for half a second that the person you love isn't waiting at home anymore. The boys called. Sometimes, mostly on birthdays, mostly when convenient, mostly in a hurry. I told myself that was enough. Until the day I climbed a ladder to clean the gutters. I reached for the edge of the gutter one more time, and the next thing I remember was the sickening crack of aluminum twisting beneath my weight. The ladder slipped. For one terrifying second, the sky spun above me. Then the ground came rushing up. The impact drove every ounce of air from my lungs. A sharp, blinding pain exploded through my hip and shoulder, and I lay there staring at the clouds drifting lazily overhead while I struggled to breathe. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world kept moving as though nothing had happened. After what felt like forever, I managed to drag my phone from my pocket. The first number I called was Nathan. He answered on the 4th ring. Dad, I'm walking into a meeting. I fell, I whispered, trying not to panic. I think I broke something. There was silence, then a sigh. Did you call an ambulance? No. I thought maybe Dad, I'm over an hour away. Call 911. That's what they're for. Before I could answer, the line went dead. I stared at the screen. Then I called Owen. Dad, I've fallen. You okay? I don't know. I've got the kids today. Melissa's out of town. I can't leave right now. I understand. It was a lie. He promised he'd call later. He never did. The ambulance came. They told me I had fractured my hip and dislocated my shoulder. Surgery went well, but recovery would take months. The discharge nurse looked at me kindly. Is there someone staying with you? My sons, I answered automatically. She smiled. Wonderful. I didn't have the heart to tell her they hadn't even visited. Instead, she arranged for a home care agency. 2 days later, someone knocked on my front door. When I opened it, a woman with warm brown eyes stood there carrying a small medical bag. Mr. Victor? That's me. I'm Rosa. I'll be helping you while you recover. I expected professionalism. I expected routine. I expected someone counting the hours until her shift ended. I didn't expect family. She made sure I took my medication. She helped me learn to walk again. She cooked simple meals because she noticed I kept pretending I wasn't hungry. One afternoon, she found an old photograph sitting on the mantel. Diane and I were dancing barefoot in our backyard. Your wife had a beautiful smile, Rosa said softly. I smiled without realizing it. So did the man standing beside her. Nobody had spoken to me that gently since Diane died. Weeks turned into months. My sons called occasionally. Always in a hurry. Always asking if I was feeling better. Always ending the conversation before I could tell them anything meaningful. Rosa, on the other hand, somehow knew when I was having a bad day before I even spoke. She'd noticed the untouched coffee, the unopened curtains, the way I stared at Diane's empty chair. Sometimes she didn't say a word. She'd simply sit with me. People underestimate silence shared with someone who truly sees you. One morning she arrived carrying a small chocolate cake. "What is this?" I asked. She looked confused. "It's your birthday." I laughed bitterly. "I'd forgotten." "No," she said gently. "Other people forgot." She lit one tiny candle. We sat at my kitchen table. She sang happy birthday off key. I laughed so hard I cried, not because the song was beautiful, because someone remembered. Later that evening my phone rang. "Nathan. Happy birthday, Dad." I looked at the clock. 10:38 at night. He'd remembered because his social media reminded him. Our conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. He never asked what I'd done that day. He never knew someone else had already made it unforgettable. Months passed. I recovered enough to walk without a cane. Life settled into a quiet rhythm. Then Owen called. His voice sounded nervous. "Dad, I hate asking. What happened?" "A business opportunity." He explained everything. A temporary cash problem. A short-term investment. He only needed $25,000. "I'll pay every penny back." I believed him. Because fathers believe their children. I transferred the money that afternoon. A year passed. Not one payment. Not one mention. Every time I brought it up there was another explanation. Another delay. Another promise. Then Nathan called. "Dad, we're remodeling. We've hit some unexpected costs. 18,000? Just until tax season." Another promise, another handshake over the phone, another repayment that never came. Between both boys, $43,000 disappeared. I never saw a dollar return. What hurt wasn't the money. It was how naturally they assumed I'd always be there to rescue them. Meanwhile, Rosa never asked me for anything. Not once. In fact, when her car broke down, I found out from someone else because she refused to burden me. When her youngest son graduated from community college, she invited me to the celebration. I almost didn't go. I worried I'd be intruding. Instead, the moment I walked through the door, her children hugged me like they'd known me forever. "This is Mr. Victor," Rosa announced proudly. "The man I've been telling you about." Her grandson pulled me toward the dinner table. "Sit by me." Nobody had asked me to sit beside them in years. That night I drove home with tears blurring the road. Not from sadness, from realizing how lonely I'd been. A few weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office. He looked over his glasses. "Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain." He folded his hands. "Your sons won't like this. My son stopped caring about this house long before I stopped owning it." He nodded. "We'll need documentation showing you're acting voluntarily." I understand. There were meetings, paperwork, a medical evaluation confirming I was mentally competent, every safeguard imaginable. When everything was ready, I asked Rosa to meet me for lunch. She smiled as she sat down. "You sounded serious." "I am." I slid the folder across the table. She opened it. Her face turned pale.
"No, read it."
"I don't need to." "You do." She read every page, then pushed the folder back toward me. "I can't accept this." "You can." "I already decided." She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "This is your family's home." I smiled sadly. "My family stopped living here a long time ago." She reached across the table and held my hand. "I would have stayed with you anyway." "I know. Then why?" "Because love should be rewarded while people are still alive to feel it." She cried. I cried. Eventually she whispered the words that confirmed I'd made the right decision. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this." And I believed her. Because unlike every promise I'd heard from my sons over the previous decade, hers didn't sound like a transaction. It sounded like love.